it's John here, and welcome to episode 7 of Java Programming. In this episode, I'm going to be teaching you about classes and how to create them and use them. Okay, in this source folder, we're going to right click, new, and instead of making a class, we're going to make a package. Now, a package, for example in Windows, will be a folder. So I'm going to call this package classes. And then if you notice, we have this default package which we've done all our other class files in. So I'm just going to minimize this package and then concentrate on this classes package. Now I'm going to right click on the classes package, new class. And then I'm going to call this game. Okay. I'm also going to right click on this classes folder, package, and make another new class. And I'm just going to call this main. Then inside this main class, I'm going to put public static void main string args. Now we're going to need to get into this public static and void. So this public basically means that you can access this method from anywhere, literally anywhere from within your program. Any class can access it. Any package can access it, another Java application can access it. Then onto this static, there are a few differences. Static basically means that there is only one of these. It never changes. For example, if I was to have an apple, a static apple, then if I took a bite out of that apple and then I got another apple, the other apple would also have a bite taken out of it if they are both stored as static. Then there's also another one, basically when you take this static out and just have public void main, if you had two apples then and then you took a bite out of one of them, then you would only have bite out of one of them. The other apple wouldn't have a bite out of it because they're both different objects. So again, static means that two objects or classes store the same details about that object, whereas a non-static class, everything is different between the different class objects. So in this static void main, I want to we want to come to this game and then we just have an empty class. Inside here we want to make a method. A method is exactly the same as this public static void main, except from it's not the starting point of the program. So we want to have public void get name. Let's start with get genre. Okay, if you notice, this class is not static. Nothing in this class is going to be static because everything that is a game is going to be dynamic. Okay, so we need to have a genre variable. So we're going to say private string genre, and we're not going to give this a value. Okay, with this method now, it says public void get genre. Now we want to actually, when someone asks and uses this method get genre, well, how do we send our genre back? Well, we want to change this void to string because we're going to return a string value back to whoever needs this value. Now, as you know, this string is the same as this genre, so I can return genre. Return genre. And then you notice the error goes away because we're now returning a genre, so it's returning a string. Okay, we also want to have a public void. Now, void means nothingness. It isn't going to return anything. It's just going to do this method, and that's it. So you want to say public void set genre, and then inside these circular brackets we want to say string and then genre. Okay, then inside this set genre we want to have this dot genre is equal to genre. Now the reason why there's this variable here which is stored within the game class, which is not static, then when we have this set genre method and we have this variable genre, this genre here is only available inside these curly braces. As soon as this method has returned, then this genre by here will just disappear into thin air and it'll be removed from the VM next time it's garbage collected. I'll get into garbage collection at a later date. So this dot genre is referring to this class's, so this game class genre, and then this genre here after the equals is referring to this genre. See how I highlight this genre and then it's highlighting this genre too, and then if I highlight this genre it's going to highlight this one and this one. So these three are different from these two variables. If you get a bit confused with how this is working, just leave a comment and I'll try my best to explain it to you, and maybe I'll make another video going into more depth about this. So we want to save this class now, and we want to go to our classes and we want to say new class. Now, what's a genre of a game? We've got action, RPG, MMO, etc. So I'm going to make a new class called RPG game. Now, normally what we do is we have this public static void main. Now for this RPG game class we're not going to do that. We're going to have what is called a constructor. A constructor is the very first thing that is called when you want to create an object. So if we wanted to create an RPG game, we'd have to call RPG game's constructor first. Exactly like the main method must be called first, when you create an object, its constructor must be called first. So to make a constructor, we say public RPG game. Now if you notice, I'm not putting anything by here, like I'm not putting void, string, etc. A constructor does not return any values. Okay, then the constructor has to be exactly the same as what the class name is. So if we call this class hello world, then this needs to be public hello world. and it must be case sensitive, otherwise it's not the same as a constructor. So after this RPG game, we want to put our circular brackets, and then as usual we want to put these curly braces after the closed circular bracket. Now we want to, inside this, we want to say this dot, and then we want to say set genre, and then we want to say RPG game. Now you'll notice that we have an error message here. Why is this? Well, the reason why we have an error here is because this RPG game class doesn't know anything about this game class over here, so it cannot see these methods because we need an object of game first. So what we can do is we can say RPG game is a child of game. So an RPG game cannot exist unless it's a game. So after this public class RPG game, we want to say extends. So we want to extend another class, and then we just say a game class. Now if you notice, this error message has gone away because it is looking in our game class here for this set genre method, and then it's going to our game class, and then it's set genre, and then it's going to set the genre. Okay, then we can also have a new class, and then I'm just going to say this is an action game. Then I'm also going to have another constructor here, public action game, and then I'm going to have my curly braces, and then I'm going to say set this dot set genre, and then we want to say action game. Now again we have an error message here, and it's saying we need to create this method. This is because we have not extended the game class. So after this action game, public class action game, we want to say extends game. Now we have two different classes that are extending game. So which one actually runs? If we had one of each, what's this genre going to be? Well, because these classes are this game class is dynamic, and these two classes are also dynamically created, then, and we're saying this dot set genre and then RPG game, and then for our action game we're saying this dot set genre to action game. They're going to be storing these values in different objects. Okay, so if we go back to our main method now, to create a new object, we want to say new, we're going to say RPG game is equal to new RPG game. Then we're going to highlight over this, and we want to import our RPG game. For some reason, create local variable. Stupid me. Obviously when we create, I tried doing this, and this will not work because we're saying that RPG game, the class, should equal to a new RPG game, and that's not proper code because we have not got a variable name. So we want to call our game a variable RPG. Now this should fix our code and it'll run. Then we want to have another class called action game. And then we're going to say action is equal to new action game. So we have our two classes, our two objects, RPG game and action game. Now if I was to system.out.println and say RPG, now we must say RPG here, this variable name, rather than using RPG game with a capital RPG and a G, because this is not a static class, it is a dynamic class, so we must access it via this variable here. So after we put our RPG in here, we want to say dot get genre. So our RPG variable genre is, and then print out that message, and then we want to print out another message saying our action variable genre is action dot get genre. Okay, here's another thing. If I was to do the following and make a object called game is equal to new game, and then give it the default constructor, well, we didn't make a new game, we didn't make a constructor to allow this. So if you notice, we have no constructor for game. So why is this code here working? Well, all classes have a default constructor that does nothing. It's basically just used by Java's internal programming to actually make the object work. So we can make a new game object, but if we come down here then and say system.out.println game.getGenre, what do you think this game.getGenre is going to output? Well, let's just print a message so we know what this is. So our game variable genre is. Okay, if I press debug now, ignore that message if it comes up. Our RPG variable genre is, and our RPG here has the genre of RPG game. Then our action get genre action, our action object has the value of action game. And when you come to our game here, which is using the default constructor, which we are not actually setting ourselves, well, our game variable genre is null. Well, what is null? Null is same as void. It is a variable that contains nothing. It is nothingness. So if we had like for example, if we come up here and say integer, and this is the object for integer, not the actual int. There is a difference between integer and int. I come to that at a later date, but we'll use an integer object and we call this int object, and then we put a semicolon on the end to finish. Well, what value is stored in this integer int object? Well, nothing. We haven't said to Java to actually store anything in this int object variable. So by default, this is going to store a value of null, nothing. Now this is absolutely fine to print out a null because it's just going to convert it to a string. But if we use to come down here and say system, no, let's just say, we'll have two variables, int double, int number 1 is equal to 100, and then we have int number 2 is equal to null. Oh, let's just not give it a value. Then what happens if we say number 1 plus number 2? We'll make a third variable, total, int total. So total is equal to number 1 plus number 2. Now as you notice, our number 1 plus number 2 is given an error because the variable has not initialized, which means that it has no value to begin with. So I'm going to just give it a value and give it the value of null. Now with these basic ints here, we cannot actually give this a value of int. So I'm going to change these to the object of integer. Okay, so now it'll allow me to have null because this is an object and not a primary data type. So what happens now if I run this and we have no errors in the code here? Well, debug. It's going to come up with, if you're running in a debug mode, it's going to come up with confirm perspective switch. I'm just going to say no to this and switch back to the console over here. And then it's going to highlight this line here. Total is equal to number 1 plus number 2. Well, if you notice here, number 2 is actually null. So what is 100 plus nothingness? Take note that this is null is not 0. It is nothingness, nothing at all. So it could be 0, it could be infinity, it could be negative infinity, but it is nothing. So if we press play again to go to the next line, we're going to see exception in thread main, our main class here, Java lang dot null pointer exception. Well, a null pointer exception basically means that we're trying to add a number with null. It can't be done. It's like trying to add 10 to a human being. You can't add 10 to someone. You can't just like look at them and then 10 of them pop out of nowhere. At least not yet anyway. And then it's going to say at classes dot main, and then in circle brackets it's going to say main.java colon 24. Now what this means, the at classes, the package, and then it's going to go down to our main class here, and then it's going to say right, our error message is in this method here in our main, and then it's going to say right, okay, it's on line 24. Now I haven't got line numbers here, but I know that this is where the error is. Line 24 is here. So if I click this, it's going to highlight the error message for me. Okay, so now that we know that that's bad, be careful when you're comparing numbers if they are null to start off with or do not contain a value. Thank you for watching. Please like, favorite, comment and subscribe. Goodbye.